So before we start, before we start anything new today, I want to take a look at some of the homework that got turned in. Okay. Actually, can you guys give me that hard drive back? Give you another file here. So I'm going to give one of you guys, I'm going to take one of, everybody ended up having the very same problem, or not everybody, but most people had the same problem, where your split frequency stuff sort of went awry because you were doing masks on the split frequency layers, and you got this weird glow around the girl's face, all that kind of stuff. I want to show you how to fix that without having to do all of your split frequency work again. Wouldn't it be happy to know that? And Jose, do you mind if we use yours? All right. Oh, actually. So guys, these are the 3 files that I need you to copy to your own hard drive. Go ahead and drop your homework in here. And then it's these 3 files. If you could copy this to your desktop, or yeah, you can just, they're not going to be homework. They're not going to be other things you have to turn in, so you don't need to keep them. But I want to work with them today because, again, I want to get through some of these maintenance issues. Thanks. So I'm going to hold off on showing you Jose's really quickly. I'll put his at the very end. I want to take a look at Susan's really quick. So if we take a look at this, I'll sort of show you, I'm going to walk you through kind of what I think she did. I usually am a pretty good judge of how things worked out. So I'm going to start here at the very beginning, and I'll just show the entire before and after. So this is kind of what ended up happening for her. I'll show you the hair in just a while here. This is what the hair ended up looking like as well. And I actually thought overall, all in all, this was actually pretty well done. There's still not really anything done with the teeth, which are, it's that, again, I threw out to everybody. So once I grade these, well, I'll grade these, you know, I'm not sure we're going to have time on Friday to get through everything we need to get on. It depends on what we get done today, whatever. But we'll go into a very hardcore way about how to fix those teeth and the different strategies for actually doing that part. A lot of people either avoided it, gave up, or some people actually took a stab at it and got and did reasonably well. So we'll talk about all that, but not today. So great. If we take a look at what she really ultimately did in this, I'm going to leave off. I'm not going to worry about the green background right now. I'm simply going to show you how it all started. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit because it's primarily about the skin. And you can see that she's got a pixel layer here, and to her credit, and one of the things that made me happy is that I think by and large her pixel layer here is strictly spill removal. I don't think it has anything else to do with it. You don't really see any of the blemishes. You don't see really going after any of this stuff, which is a really good sign because, again, that's what I'm trying to get away from in this class. That is old school way of dealing with stuff. That's how you destroy skin. So then she gets into her high and low layer here, and again you can see she's got her low and her low copy. She's got her high and her high copy, so I'm going to turn those on really quickly. And to sort of show you what this looks like and what it doesn't look like, again, using history snapshots is the easiest way to do this. So I'm going to simply click on, and I don't name these because I'm just showing them to you. So that's a snapshot 1 has got all the split frequency work on it. Snapshot 2 has got the stuff that doesn't have on it. And so then I can go back and forth between the two. So this is what it looks like for her split frequency work. And if you zoom in really close to look at this, even at this scale right here, you can actually see that it still looks like skin. This still looks actually real to me. All the pores in here look real to me. I probably would have knocked this part down a little bit more, but again, these are, but overall in all, I think this still really looks like skin. Again, we're going to turn this on and off. This is something that, you know, again, things that we're learning and taking and spending more time on, but this whole darker area under her eye right here, these are the kind of things to lighten this up that we would actually go after using the low layer. That's what the low layer is really designed to do. It doesn't change the texture at all. That's primarily the job of the high layer, but you could have actually, again, and we did this with the other girl before, we actually might even take a look at this, and when we get to Jose's, we'll see what he did on this one, whatever, but we might go after, again, a lot of people will simply use a brush to sample this color and then work this in really slowly to sort of bring this back. But that's what the low layer is really dedicated to do, is to actually smooth out. And I made comments to a lot of you guys in the notes about, with your grade, whatever, that these are the kind of things that we talk about that are, so when I talk about the blotchiness of skin, and it's not the only place. You'll actually see it, you catch it right here on the side of her nose. That could have been smoothed out. You'll also catch it right up here. There's a little bit of discoloration that's right up in here. I probably myself, if I was retouching this, whatever, there's a pretty rough transition right here from this shadow area going into this part of the shadow. I would simply soften that line. I wouldn't open this entire shadow up. It starts to look fake, and you start to destroy the contour of her face, which you don't want to do. But smoothing out those transitions makes her skin look smoother. And I would have done the same thing right in here. I would have, again, this is a darkness in here that doesn't really need to be in here as such. Coming around her face, again, this is contouring that's deliberate and should actually be there. I would have lightened this area up right around here. Again, well, I would have gone after this really hard part in here tonally, but nonetheless. And I probably would have softened some of this shadow on this side. I definitely would have softened the translation line under here. All of that, you can do one of two ways. You can do it in your low layer. It's a little bit faster that way, or, and again, to Susan's credit, she actually is using tonal retouching on this. And in some cases, what you'll find is that when you try to actually lighten up areas, especially under eyes and stuff like this, it ends up going wrong, horribly wrong. You end up, and again, working in a low layer, it just ends up taking on a color that doesn't look right. It looks fake. Tonal retouching has never looked fake to me. When you lift that tone up, when you lighten that area under her eye, doing it tonally, it is always seems to be believable and seamless and work well. But it takes 20 times as long. So again, match the retouching to the, so anyway. So then she goes after other things here, so you can see she actually is going after the lines under her eyes, doing it tonally, and it's shocking the difference that it actually makes. And then finally, this is her big tonal layer, and you'll see she does go after areas like all of this stuff. So this ended up being the end result. And again, that looks like real skin, but look at the difference, my God. So Susan, give me any idea about how long you spent on this? Roughly. 6 or 7 hours. You practice this enough, you cut that in half. Serious. This is a 1 to 2 hour retouch. Maybe, okay, 2 to 3 hour retouch, whatever. But again, you guys are just learning this whole part of it. And you know, those tricks that you're getting here, whatever, they become automatic and you just go after them right away. So, okay, anyway, I thought this was, and then the hair, which I can't really spot how you did it. Can you tell everybody really quickly exactly how you did it? So, oh, interesting. So pretty much like we were doing with the other girl, but then when you talk about painting it in, are you trying to recreate the hair streak sort of like in a mask?
I would like use, I would use a mask. I would do some more like bigger chunks.
Mm-hmm.
And then for like this finer transitions, I would like really make my brush a lot smaller.
Right.
And do like the individual kind of like.
So you would actually paint hair on the image layer?
No, into the mask.
And just into the mask. Okay. Well, it looks pretty flawless, I got to say, because usually what you spot, again, most people wouldn't look right at this hair they wouldn't look at this area here specifically. people are drawn to people's eyes. People look at eyes, people are looking at the face, whatever. The hair is an afterthought. But the transition that you manage to get in here, so usually what you see when people do this is you see this really uncomfortable transition. If I really look hard, I can still spot a small little bit of it right in here where, again, I know where it's probably transitioning anyway. But if I were just approaching this as somebody who had never seen this image before, I wouldn't suspect that in a million years. And I wouldn't look for it. So anyway. Okay. So has that hard drive gotten around yet? Or are we still?
It's going around.
Okay. All right, I want to look at Marge's real quick because I wrote this to you in, oh, sorry, wrong one. So this was actually really subtly done, Marge. In a way, I really sort of like what's going on, but how the hell do you do the hair? This is what it looks like. This is the before and after. This is the before and after. And it doesn't show up anywhere. No. I've never seen anybody do this, so I know this is original. I know it wasn't like, oh yeah, I just grabbed something from my head. But anyway, it looks like to me that this is possibly hand painted in. Might be, okay. So hand painting is a possibility. Basically how to build a brush that would do that. So let me add that to my list. Anyway, I was just curious because I thought it was actually it was an interesting fix for it. Because most people, the strategy is pretty much what Susan did. They'll come in and they'll actually take all of this hair right here and they'll pull it down into here so that you have really more of a solid line there. But in your case, you just sort of like softened that whole transition up. It still looks real because it doesn't look perfect. And so there's something about that that appealed to me. So anyway, just throwing that out there. So I'm going to show you Sarah's really quick. Check. So in Sarah's, what I wanted to show you here is she was one of the few people who actually attempted to fix the teeth, and you can see this is what her fix is, and it is all done tonally. This is what it looks like. This is strictly a soft light layer. Again, it's still a tonal dodge and burn layer, and it actually is really, really effective in the terms of it lightened up her teeth a little bit, making them unreal. The only problem that I've still got in this is that there is still the overlap of one tooth on the other. Why do you see that as an overlap? Exactly. It's the shadow that's actually happening right here. So it's this little guy right here, and then it's the shadow of this tooth sitting on the other tooth right there. And the fact that you can see in this little area right here, that tooth sticks out enough that it's actually catching light, whereas this tooth is actually sitting back deep enough in her mouth that her lips are shading that part. So that would be the way, another possible way of fixing it is that the shadow that's on the side of this tooth is fine, but the fact that it's casting a shadow on the other tooth sets that second tooth, sets this tooth right here further back in her head, and that's why these things look overlapped. If she continued to lighten this one up to match this, she would have pulled that tooth forward. There's also a problem right here with this curve. You can see the curve that's actually, so that the line between her teeth is actually bent. It's more like an arc, right? So you can see it's like an arc here. How would you straighten that up? You are on today, girl. Absolutely, liquefy. Liquefy does other things as well. You see how this, it almost looks like, it doesn't look like it's really been broken underneath, but it's really sort of a jagged tooth sort of like underneath. Liquefy also would help lengthen this little bit right here and push this little bit back up so you can reform the tooth. You can take that arc line out, and then with tonal retouching, whatever, you're done. Make sense? We hadn't gotten to liquefy yet, so that wasn't really an option for you guys on this. Again, it's what I've said before in this class. There's so much information. There's so much in this class that's circular. You know, I want you to know this, but we don't know. But we haven't gone through that yet. But at any rate, I just applauded the attempt. It was about halfway there, so I thought that was pretty good. All right. No.
You have retouch. How do you get like strip here or the like bald patch and then like?
All right, I'm going to show you a trick, and this is something that I would do. So I'm going to show you a trick because to try to address that very same problem, because interestingly enough, also how you ultimately fix the with split frequency layers. So this is typically what I would do. I'm going to go back to Susan's because it's actually just a little bit more complete and show you how I would handle that part. So if I were to present this to a client and just say, okay, you know, this is what we had agreed to do. A little too polished for me. I would say, okay, fine, I understand that part. Why don't we actually sit down together and take a look at this and see how you feel about this. And so this is what I would do. I would come up to the very, very top of my layer, Command, Option, Shift, and hit the letter E. This is now a complete merge of everything that looks just like this guy does right now. Then I would turn the thing off all the way down, including my white layer, including the extras that she doesn't know about that turned out to be well done. So at any rate now, if we take a look at this, hang on one sec. If we go up to the top now, all I have got, the only complete go to retoucher, I really, and you grab a and it looks but what you're really doing here, I'm going to leave this mask white now. What you're really doing here is you can actually come in, again, you can drop the opacity of your brush or you can actually do it with flow, either one. So let's say, for instance, they felt like that, what can we say? They felt like that maybe they wanted to return a little bit more of texture to the skin, something that had actually left. So I'm going to zoom in here. So she's actually gotten that part out pretty well. Again, if I turn this off, you can see that there's a few, let's do this. Well, let's say they feel like they needed to return. Again, if I hit the B key to get a brush, I'm going to leave it as a normal blending mode, 100% opacity. I'm going to simply drop the flow, and again, I'm going to drop the flow way down, so I'm down around a 5 or 6%. And the only reason I do that is because you can do it using opacity, but in opacity you have to make successive strokes one after another. In this, it's more like a scrubbing action to slowly bring this back in. So I'm going to hit the X key to get black as my foreground color. I'm going to make my brush much smaller. Sorry guys, let me turn this off. And then I'm going to come over to this area. So I'm working on my layer mask, and I simply am going to hide the finished retouch layer using my layer mask and slowly bring this back in. So I'm just going to start to scrub on that. And you see how fast that took off. So again, this flow, even at 5%, is happening too quick. So I'm going to undo that part, and I'm going to drop my flow down to 1%, and then I'm going to slowly start to bring this back in. And you can see at this stage of the game now, I have returned a little bit of hair. I haven't but I've brought a little bit of it back. So whatever it is, to they would say to me, okay, you know, we need to, okay, I can balance this out, but do you need to add the other tooth in there? Yes, I do. Do you need to then actually level the bottom of the teeth out so they don't look as chipped as they do? Yes, I do. Do you need to remove the overlap of that? Yes, I do. And all of that goes in your notes. But for you personally, all the decisions that you want to make. So true story, because we're talking about imperfections here again, and this is just something, it's a relative thing, just something to know. Cindy started her career here in Chicago, and my wife at the time was a model, and Cindy was 15 years old and went to my wife's agency, David Lee, a modeling agency, whatever, and wanted to sign up. And they looked at her. You guys know who Cindy Crawford is, right? Yeah. And they looked at her and they said, you'll never work unless you get that mole removed. Her mole. It became her signature. What do you mean? Oh. Well, she's worth $1 billion? I wouldn't know that. Well, tell me about it, because they didn't sign her. She went right to another agency. She went to Elite. They signed her, and she made a fortune for herself and for her agency. So anyway. So some people may look at that and say, I think those are adorable. I want to keep them. You ever feel like your computer owns you? You know, it's like who's controlling who here? And I feel like my computer has totally got the upper hand. Have we gotten through on that? Yes. Katie. Is the hard drive not acting at all? Okay, wait, can you guys do the same airdrop again? Do you mind doing that? All right, give me the hard drive and let me make sure it's still working. Shoot.
When you have your total layers, how do you look at the mask?
Oh, how do you look at the tonal retouching layer itself? Yeah. Yeah, simply hold down the Option key and click on the eyeball. Because it turns, you need to turn everything else off because of its soft light blending mode. So. It up. Everything else off and you see it. It is a blending mode. If you have a layer on underneath, it won't show. It'll only show the impact on the layer underneath it. Hey, Connor, can you also start me a sign-in sheet? Thanks. So, have you guys airdropped yet? Okay, so what I'd like to do is open up Jose's really quick. So if everybody could open that image. And this is a classic example of running into masking issues that happen as a consequence of split frequency work. And I'll try to explain sort of what's going on in all of this. And the first thing that's actually happened, because this has happened to a number of you in this, so again, let me make my layer palette much larger. So what you can see, what Jose has actually done is everything started out, and in the very beginning, things worked really well. So if we take a look at his knockout, that's what his knockout looks like. And the one consolation I say to everyone who ran into the problem, got this part. We're making serious progress here. You should be thrilled about that part. However, the split frequency work was the next step in the equation. And so this is where things start to get rough. So you can see that Jose's actually got these layers here, and he's gone ahead and made his 2 layers here. One of them got blurred. But I think what happened, or what's looking like has happened, is that this layer was, so he had copied his zero selective color along with the high layers right here. That mask was in effect. So you can see the original green is still here. He's actually, the face is done correctly. The face is that way. But had this been made without the mask, then you wouldn't, the entire masked area here, all of this green would actually be this same sort of gray color, and it would just be dropping out. Make sense? So that was part of the problem right here. So, but that being said, he has done all of this work, and there is no reason to undo all of this work. And so this is how I would fix it. So for me, and I need everybody to do this, if you can come up to the very top, to the high layer at the very top, I'm going to just click on the way it looked like when it was opened up. So all of his layers are turned on. Everything is turned on here. You can see the eyeball is on all of them, except for the virgins that are sitting down at the bottom, and you can leave those turned off. I need you to turn off everything. So turn off the background, the white background, and also turn off the zero selective color. This is where he's actually done the initial knockout and his spill removal. So the only thing that we have on is his low layer, his low copy, his high layer, and his high copy. So we are looking at his split frequency work right now, and that is all that's here. Does that make sense? That's the only thing we're looking at is his, so here, the only thing it's on are the low layers and the high layers. So this is his total split frequency work. So select the very top layer, make sure it is highlighted and active. So the high copy is the top one and is highlighted and active. Hold down Command Option Shift E. How many times have you heard me say? What I've just done is I have created a single layer that has all of this work in it. Now I've still got all the problems. You'll still see that edge that's around the bottom of her face. I've still got issues there. I've got really horrible issues in this hair spill part right here. All of that is problematic for me. This edge over here is also really super soft and all that kind of stuff. So I have problems with this, but I've pulled it all into one single layer. Are we good on that? Turn everything else off except for this layer, or the split frequency underneath. Turn all of that off. Go down to the bottom and turn on his original knockout. This is his selective zero selective color and his white background. And this is what the initially looked like. So what I've done is the white background, the original knocking out plus the spill removal, and then up at the very top, all the split frequency work. That's right up here. Does that make sense to everybody? So if I turn off this layer up at the top, you can see I don't see the advantage of his split frequency. So turn this back on, the eyeball back on. We are going to add a black layer mask to this guy. So again, if you can't remember the Option key, holding down the Option key and click on Add Layer Mask, simply add a white layer mask and then hit Command I to invert it. Now all of the split frequency work is being hidden. None of the split frequency layers that built this top layer are turned on. So the only thing that's going to happen when I start to reveal this stuff, it's actually going to clean up his initial knockout. So working on the layer mask itself, hit the B key to get a brush. I'm going to check the edge of my brush, and I'll leave it somewhere in the middle. It'll give you a little bit more control. It keeps the edge a little bit soft, but it doesn't need to be, you don't want it to be completely hard. You also don't want it to be completely soft, because I don't want it to spray out onto the edges of her face, which is where that whole glow is that's around her face. So I'm going to keep it around 50% hardness. Again, I'm going to click on Adobe on the name to get rid of that. I am going to go to my tablet. Again, I'm working on, hit the D key to default your foreground and background colors to black and white. I'm actually going to then use the X key to make sure white is your foreground color, and then we are going to paint white on this layer mask to reveal his split frequency work. So I'm just going to make my brush a little bit bigger, and then I'm simply going to check that I have normal blending mode, 100% opacity, and 100% flow, and then I'm going to simply come around here, avoid the edges of her face. And I'm going to come down here like this, and come up here like this. And then at this stage of the game, I need to check this mask to see what's really going on, because I don't want to have any holes in it. So hold down the Option key and click on the mask, and you can see this is what I've just painted. I'm going to go ahead and paint the thing that's in the middle. And then again, I'm simply going to click on the image layer, and now I have got his nice clean edges for... Let me reset this really quick. I've got his nice clean edges with that beautiful spill removal, but I've also got, this is all his split frequency work that's actually in there. So I didn't, how long did that take? In all of this, let's do a quick snapshot of this. So come over to your history palette, click to do a snapshot of it. I've got a snapshot number 1. I'm just going to name it that way, and then scroll all the way up to the top and click on Jose's original and the snapshot, and it took us 30 seconds to this works. You guys know about all these tools. It's just sort of the way you're starting to think about them and what they need to do. And I was talking to Marge and Katya this morning, whatever, and Katie is like, it's my job to teach you guys how to be deceitful, how to lie, how to cheat, how to do everything you possibly, take the shortcut, cut the corner, all the above. I used to have a photo assistant that cut every corner in the world, every single one, and it blew up in his face his entire life. He never succeeded in doing it once. And I was like stunned. I was like, after 30 years of this, you haven't figured this out? But if you can get away with it, anyway. Poor Scott. Okay, are there any questions about this? All right, we can close this part up. We don't need this guy anymore. I'm going to zip out and do something else here really quickly, and it's the images that I just sent to you guys to show you. So if you could, we are going to do a little bit of color work done in this class. And so how many of you guys are struggling with your color, with controlling color? Anyone? Could always show you a couple of tricks. I'm just going to show them to you. So if you could, do me a favor, we're going to start with this Chrome, Google Chrome. It's a small JPEG. If you actually could just drag that guy onto Photoshop, it'll open up. It'll say that it has an embedded profile. Again, this is a screen grab that I have, so it's actually grabbed the custom profile that I have built for my monitor. That's what this is. It's MacBook Pro _Versor, and this was the date that this guy was made. So it was made in the 10th of August. That can't be, can it? Because that hasn't happened yet, has it? Hey, I am so good, I work in the future. So clearly I have to redo that. But at any rate, you can go ahead and say, okay, that part doesn't really matter to us. So if you wanted to convert it to the working space, you could. It won't change anything. So just go ahead and say, okay, either one. And you can see that it's got a horrible tint to it. So if you take a look at this and it's clearly applied to all the people who are film scanning, so it's unfortunate that Michael can't be here. Jenny, do you still have that file, that scan file, 3F file that we were working with when we were doing the scanning, the one of the flamingos? Do you have a copy of that?
I think it's still on the computer.
Oh,
But I can,
if we could grab that really quick, because that's another one that we can work on. So this actually,
Are you using a 3F file? 'Cause I
yeah.
don't have that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see. I just know that the one that Jenny had actually has all of the issues that I want to talk about. So Carson, you had actually sent me email asking me about film scanning and that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to show you guys here would apply to that in spades, as it were. So I'm going to show you, basically, Carson, when you're scanning in 3F. We had this conversation the other day, right? So that part is correct. The beginning part of that is correct. So when you then bring your file into Photoshop, what I'm going to show you guys now would be the way that I would go after dealing with that part. Okay, so maybe hopefully this is going to answer some questions about just color in general, but also answer some questions specific to how I would approach any film scan that I was beginning with. So I'm going to show you two versions of this. I'm going to show you the old school version of it, which is what it's the way actually Matt, the guy who's in the cage, uses. And it does a reasonably good job, but I'm going to show you guys a faster, more automated way to do it. And we'll sort of see how that goes. So this is how we would go about doing it. I'm going to show you the old school way. Yes?
I forgot to grab this file.
Okay, that's all right. Sure. So there's a number of issues that we're having problems with this. So in one, there's clearly a red tint on it. Oh, and by the way, we are going to deal with perspective today in a big way. And the files that I'm using, and actually all the techniques that I'm using, were all developed and built by a guy named Jesus Ramirez. Does anybody in this room know who that is? So if you're interested in doing there's 3 sources that I use, the YouTube sources that I'll use to look at for retouching techniques. Jesus Ramirez is at the Photoshop training channel, so if you just search for PTC, that's how he usually describes it. This guy is brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. This is a file from him that he was using to actually do exactly what I'm going to show you right now. So I am a huge believer in giving credit where credit is due. Some of these tricks I already knew before, but this is a really good file and it's a simple example of it. But his work on perspective was a revelation to me, and I'm going to pass that, guys, on to you. But again, you want to give credit to the people who have, who have influenced you and impacted you. So he would be one source that I would look at. Pixum Perfect is another one that I actually look at. He is actually a whole lot more visible. I think he's probably got the largest of the Photoshop followings. So if we do a quick Google search, I'll show you who these people are really quick, just so that you know, because there's no reason to end your education right here. So this is Jesus Ramirez right here, Photoshop training channel. If we then go to this is Pixum Perfect right here. This guy is also extremely talented. And then the last one is Flern. Do you guys know about Flern? P-H-L-E-A-R-N. This is Flern. And actually, Flern is done by a guy named, I'm not going to remember, Aaron Nate. It's actually out of Chicago. He's local, or he was local. I don't have any idea where he is now. But anyway, those would be 3 sources that I would consider if you're ever running into a wall. If all of a sudden you can't really figure out the finer elements of you split frequency all of a sudden became something weird for you again, or you want to get more about liquefying, or you want to know how to build a custom brush, whatever. These would be the 3 sources that I would go to.
Will we have access to your page?
Yes, you will, forever. Or until, I say forever. At one point, YouTube went from, so YouTube was, it's owned by Google, and it used to actually, Google Plus used to be the only way you could actually, I could actually record these things and post. They would stream up live, and then Google decided to get rid of Google Plus. Google Plus was like their Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was ages ago, and nobody ever bought into it. Everyone was just like, why would I do this, really? But for me, it was the only way, it was the way I was posting all of my stuff, and when that happened, it's like, all of a sudden my account got orphaned and nobody could get access to anything because they couldn't do it through Google Plus because Google Plus had actually gone away. I know, it was really weird. And so I lost like 500 videos, but I haven't done Google Plus for years. So everything that I've done for the last 2, 3, 4 years anyway is all up there, and there's no reason for me to take it down unless I hit some limit. And I don't think there's a limit at YouTube. Okay, so anyway, back to this image in Photoshop. So this would be the first way to go after this, and the way that will actually hopefully help you guys see what's going on. So we're going to add a curve to this. So with this image open, come over to your layers palette, click on the little, we're going to add an adjustment layer, the little guy that looks like the circle, half black, half white, and come up and we're going to add a curve to this. And when this curve comes up, you should see in your properties palette up here, this curve line that is actually coming back here, RGB, and you should also see a histogram in here. Does everybody have a histogram in theirs? So can we talk about, now I'm not a huge believer in histogram, well, I mean, I believe in histograms, whatever. I don't use them a whole lot, but do you guys, can anybody explain to me what a histogram really is? Okay, so basically what it is, if you take a look here, at this part right here, so you can see in this case right here, but conventional wisdom says that in a full tonal range file, you have a black point and a white point and the entire tonal range in the middle, but that your black point is a neutral gray and your white point is a neutral gray. So the trick to this is to try to get those 2 points to be roughly the same, to end up landing at the same spot. And this is how you do it manually, old school. If you come up to this drop-down menu right here, this is RGB, and you go to the red channel right here, you can see that this, again, histogram is showing where the pixel count actually is. So you can see there's a huge number up in these quarter tones that are up into here, or mid to quarter tones that are sitting up in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little slider right here and I'm going to drag it in this direction, and what I'm trying to do is bring this point right up to where the histogram begins to start. Because what I'm now saying is I want to take this point right here and make it black. You want to then do the exact same thing with this guy right here. If you hold down your Option key when you click on one of these, you'll actually see your, here, just bring them all the way back out again. If you hold down your Option key and click on this, you'll see your screen goes completely red. This is the same trick that you can use in Camera Raw. As you start to drag this up, you'll start to see detail begin to appear. So right now you can see that there's part of that girl's hat is starting to break through. This is showing you now exactly where that black point is. So you need to bring it up to the point that you just begin to see a little bit of that black coming through. So we have now mapped the darkest of the red is now being mapped down to 0. We need to do the same thing for the white. Again, hold down the Option key, click on the white point, and start to drag it back And the minute you start to see red breaking through, this is showing you that you're now getting back to your your white point mapping. And so the red channel now has been mapped to spread the entire red out over the entire tonal range. Does that make sense, everyone? We're going to do the same thing now with the green channel. So again, hold down the Option key, click on the black slider, it all goes green, start to drag it up. The minute you start to see the image begin to break through, you need to back it off a little bit. You don't want to actually clip it all the way down. You just want to be right on that edge. And I've got just a little bit that was down in the corner. Again, click and bring on your white slider and start to drag it back till you just see green start to poke through. And then back it off a little bit. And then finally, we need to do the same thing in the blue channel. So again, down here in the bottom, hold down the Option key, click on the black point slider, it all goes blue. Start to drag it up till you just start to see something tear through. Back it off now a little bit, it's set at that point, and then come back and do the exact same thing for the white point. And I'm just starting to see a little bit of blue come through right there and let go. Wow. Wouldn't you say? Turn the curve off. Is that an improvement or not? So it not only removes the color cast, it actually bumps the contrast up, and it actually maps the contrast to what it should be mapped at. So it's a twofer. Make sense to everyone? So that part seems pretty good, but that also seems somewhat laborious. So at any rate, just turn the eyeball on this guy off. We're going to see how other ways to actually do this. Click on the, we're going to add another adjustment layer on top of this. So we're going to actually add another curve on the very top of this. And I'm going to come up and see this auto button right here. I'm simply going to click auto. And it does that, which looks awful. And you would think, okay, come on, Adobe it can do better than that, right? Check this out. If you come up to this little drop-down menu here that's sitting up right across from the properties up at the top, if you click on this, you can come down and there are auto options right here. And this is the reason I actually use curves to do some of this work is this inside of Camera Raw. I could have added a Camera Raw filter to this, but Camera Raw only gives you one option for auto. Curves gives you 4 options for auto, and it's these 4 guys right here. By default, enhanced brightness and contrast is what is checked, and that's exactly what's going on in this point right here. It bumped the contrast and it bumped the brightness, but it didn't help anything else in this. As a matter of fact, I think it looks just as bad as without it. Does that make sense, everyone? But there are 4 algorithms here to do auto to actually do this remapping that you can pick. Enhanced brightness and contrast is actually not the best one. If you come up to the top and click on Enhance Monochromatic Contrast, it doesn't get much better. And move there is exactly what we just did when we moved those sliders up to reach the edges of the histogram. Does that make sense? But then finally, the sort of icing on the cake is this thing right here, snap neutrals to your midtones. If you enable that, it actually then pulls the color cast out of the midtones, and that to me is a far superior way of doing it. So again, like most of Photoshop shit, the stuff that ships as the default is wrong. So this should be your default to use auto. Especially if you're a film scanner and you want to not fuck with this stuff, if you want to just zap it in really quickly, so you want this to be your default. Simply click on the bottom right here where it says Save as Defaults. This will now be the go-to every time. So now if you hit OK, you can actually see that that has actually been corrected now. If you want to compare the two, again, we're going to do a snapshot of this. So I'm going to do a snapshot of this and call it auto and say OK. And then I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to turn the other one back on and I'm going to snapshot that and I'm going to call it manual. And say OK, and then I'm going to simply go up to the top here and toggle back and forth between auto and manual. Auto and manual. Which would you use?
Wait, how did you modify the
So I'll show you.
Get up to that auto.
No, I'm going to show you the auto panel again. So we're going to go back in time. So this is the curve that we just built using the sliders to come in. So instead, I'm going to turn its eyeball off. I'm going to add a new curve. And then it's this auto button up here. But you need to change how that auto button works because the default doesn't. Here, let me reset mine to what it is. This is what your screen probably looks like. That is the default. That is not the algorithm that you want to use to work with auto. So to change it, click on this little drop-down menu right here, come down to Auto Options, and if you click on Fine Light and Dark and Light colors first, it actually gets considerably better. But then if you also want to click on Snap Neutral Midtones, but then finally, you want this to always be the behavior. You don't want to have to come to this menu every single time. So simply click on Save as Defaults down here at the bottom and say OK. So, not going to be perfect in every scenario. This will actually be pretty good for a lot of parts, but it's a way for especially you filmmakers to start out because you guys really don't have the advantage of, I mean, we can take a look and see what this looks like using auto in Camera Raw. So let's actually see what that looks like. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to make a duplicate of this background layer. And then I'm simply going to, because I don't worry about, typically I would turn this into a smart, well, let's go ahead and do it right. I'm going to turn this into a smart object. So up to the layer menu, down to smart objects, convert to smart object, and you'll see you got the little guy down there. And then come up to filter, down to camera raw filter. It'll open up into camera raw. And then here too, you can hit auto. And that's what it does. Say okay to that. Do a third snapshot here. And this is camera raw. And say OK. So this is my solutions. This was camera raw. This was the manual version. And this is auto that has been modified. Where would you go? Yeah. So what's happening here is exactly the same. The only advantage, so that is exactly the same move. This is what the new algorithm is doing. However, when we add that kicker of actually taking of making the midtones neutral, that is sort of the icing on the cake, and that's what you're not doing when you're actually doing another image that actually has that same issue with it. So I'm going to close this guy up. You don't need to save it. Thanks, Jesus. I'm going to go open the other one now really quickly. And again, you can leave it in any color space. It doesn't really matter. So in this case, we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to come in, I'm going to add a curve to this. I'm going to click on Auto. And it does a fairly good job in the contrast range part of it. But and if you take a look at it again, if we take a look at our options right here, you can see that I do have the fine light tone, dark and light tones, and I do have the snap neutral midtones here is actually enabled. However, there is still a color cast in this, and the color cast is happening primarily in the midtones. That's where it's really, that's where I'm struggling. The highlights have been set correctly, the shadows have been set correctly, but I'm still struggling with something in the midtones. So I need to read the midtones, and you can do that using these eyedroppers right here. If you take a look at these eyedroppers, you'll see the one that's on the top right here is completely empty. This is actually how you could set a black point. So if you clicked on this eyedropper and came over on this image and clicked a point right here, that actually just set that point I clicked on to pure black. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. The eyedropper on the other end, the one that's actually got, it's sort of like half full right here. If you click on it, this is actually going to set your white point, and I would come over here and click on an area that is actually as highlight white as I can get it. Again, I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. The one in the middle right here, though, is your midtones, and it is your neutral setting. So what you want to do is you want to pick on that middle slider right there. You can see it's sort of half full of gray. or that's what it's supposed to be. And then you need to find a neutral midtone in your image, not that's a neutral, but a midtone. For instance, the sidewalk would probably be a good candidate, and all of a sudden, in 3 steps, you have actually color corrected this image. Make sense? Now, some people get into using these eyedroppers, and they actually want to use the eyedroppers to set specific points for them. And so I'm going to show you how that works really quickly. So I'm going to ask you to throw this curve away temporarily. So who can tell me what the hottest spot on this image is? It's hard to say. The darkest spot in this image is. The matter is, to us, to black, this point should map to white, provided that they do not destroy or your highlight detail. Again, these moves that we make are only for white point, but if this disrupts if this blows out your highlight detail, then you need to back it off. It's not good. If this blocks up your shadows, you need to back this off. That's not good. Does that sort of make sense? All right, so to find out where my highlight and shadow points are, we're going to add another adjustment layer on this. So come down here to the bottom, click on adjustment layer, and you want to add threshold to this. And then threshold happens if your image goes to, this is completely pixelated. This is now a 2-bit image. I'm sorry, this is a 1-bit image. It either has black in it or white in it. That's over here that there's a slider, and it always comes on, and its default, it's actually set at the midtones. So what's happening on our scale of 0 to 255, the very middle of it is 128. So what's happening here is that every single thing in this image that is lighter than 128 in tone has gone white. Everything that's darker than 128 in tone has gone black. You can use this, though, to find the darkest part of your image. So we're going to do the darkest part first. Take your slider and just start to bring it down until everything begins to disappear. And you can see that right down here in the corner, right down here, there's a little dot that is still left. That is actually the darkest part of your image. If you hold down your spacebar and command key, you can zoom into this area down here. It's this thing right down here. If you turn off the eyeball, you can sort of see what it is. It's actually a shadow that's on her backpack. I'm going to come over to my, again, my color picker tool, so a color sampler tool, not the eyedropper tool, but the color sampler tool, the same one that we use all the time to actually do for our levels work, and you want to simply put a sample point right there. That sample number 1 point is sitting right here, and it is the darkest part of my image. Does that make sense, everyone? So then I'm going to back all the way back out again. So I'm simply holding down spacebar command option to zoom back out. And then I'm going to go in the other direction. I'm going to go all the way to the top to find out the very last thing that ends up being white in this image. So I'm continuing up. I got to back it off just a little bit. And the whitest part of my image are these areas that are up in here. And I'm going to check these. The one thing you want to avoid, especially with whites, is you want to avoid a spectral highlight. So if you've got a reflection off of a piece of chrome or off of a mirror or something that is completely blown out, that would not be a good point to pick. You want to pick something that you think is legitimate white. So again, I'm looking at these areas up here. I see this spot, and this big spot right here. I'm going to temporarily turn the eye off. This is actually sky out here, and so is this, and so is this. Those are all legitimate points. There's no spectral highlight in that. So again, I'm going to turn this guy back on. I'm going to try to get this just a little bit. I'm trying to get up to like a 251 or something. I'm just trying to find out which is the last of these. So I've selected that threshold, and I'm simply going to use my arrow keys to tap up. And it looks like this guy right up here at the very top. This is the one that I'm going to go for. So again, I'm going to zoom into that. Again, the color sampler tool. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to drop a sample point right on that guy as well. So then you have found your highlight and threshold. So you can actually, your highlight and shadow, or your white point and your black point targets. So I'm going to get rid of this guy right here. You can double click on the hand to kick back out. Zoom in a little bit on this. So then again, I'm going to put a curve on this guy. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add an adjustment layer curve. And now I can use these I can use these pickers to actually hit those points. So I'm going to hit the shadow one first. So it's the one at the very top. It's the one that the tube is supposed to look black. And I'm simply going to click on that spot right down there. Then I'm going to go to the white slider. That's the one that's at the very top, my white point up here. And I'm going to click on this slider up here at the top. And then finally, I'm going to still go after the one in the middle and click on something in here that should be a neutral gray. And so I'm going to hit that guy. And that is how you color correct. For advanced version of this. What's happening here is that, and we actually mapped this thing down here to black. So that really probably shouldn't be black. That's shadow detail down there. So you can see if you look at your readout right here, it got mapped down to zeros right here. It's totally black. That may be not what you want. It probably isn't what you want. So where is our typical shadow detail? Where should that roughly be?
20s.
In the mid-20s, if we're actually thinking about taking something to print, right? So you can change the value of these color pickers. So if you double click on the shadow one, it'll open up a dialog box. That's actually weird. Hang on. It usually doesn't come up this way, but I'm going to go ahead and see if this does work, and we'll see. Now it's set to pure black, 0, 0, 0. You can change this to 25, 25, 25, and say OK to this. Now you'll get this warning dialog box that comes up, and this is, so where we're at right now is dangerous. That's all I can tell you guys. This is a little bit risky, so just so that you know. If you say yes, I want to change this as my new defaults forevermore until you go back in and change this guy, it's going to, that 25, 25, 25 is going to be stuck. This is not the way Photoshop was designed to really function, and it can cause problems is all I'm trying to say. So for me, I rarely make this as the default, because what that's saying is that when you close Photoshop up and then restart it, it's still going to keep these values in here. I'm going to say no to this because it will still allow me, for temporarily while I'm working with this curve, it will do what I want it to do. But I'm not making this a permanent choice. Does that make sense, everyone? So I'm going to say no to this. I don't want to, I just want to use it for this image right here, right now. And you can see how the shadows back up. So the shadows are now set correctly. Again, you can do the exact same thing for the highlights. You could double click on the highlight because it's mapping this sky out to pure white. It's mapping it out to 255, 255, 255. If that sky is supposed to have detail, what range does it need to be in? 45 to 250, right? So I'm going to change its mapping value 255 to 250 because that's the top end of my range. I'm going to do that for all three of those colors. So it's all 250, 250, 250. I'm going to say OK to that. I'm not going to keep that as a new default, but using that little color picker, I am going to select that point up there one more time. And then finally, the one that's in the middle, if you double click on it, you'll see it's set to 128, 128, 128. And I'm going to leave that there because those are my midtones. And so something in here is roughly around that. So again, using that mapping guy right there, I'm going to click on that. And this to me is a better built image right here. It's got less contrast in this. I've actually got shadow detail in here. You can see, and part of it was the mapping of the midtones. This is actually still in the shadow area down in here. I've got an 11, a 12, and a 40. And we wanted this to be in the 25s. However, if you add up 11, somebody do, well, here, I'll do this really quick. What's 11, 12, and 40. This is actually 23, and then 40 is 63 divided by 3 is 21. So I'm just averaging this. It's roughly in the midtones. It's very close to my target. Make sense? Are there questions about any of this? All right. You can throw this guy away as well. So there's another image that I want to work on really quickly, And again, I will throw out all apologies right now. It's a Terry Richardson image. How many people in this room know Terry Richardson? Okay. So it is, I think we are in class 10 right now. I'm sorry for all the confusion about this, but we're slowly getting back on track. Is everybody sort of comfortable about getting back on track? Yeah, okay. I'm not seeing it there. Let me look in 11. Fuck. It's in week 7. So if you look in week 7, there's a Terry Richardson photograph at the very bottom that is probably typically Terry Richardson. So it's this sunburn by Terry Richardson, if you could actually open this guy up. So again, I'm just going to apologize for content, but it is typically Terry Richardson, but it presents a problem for us that we need to deal with. And again, it is associated with color. How would you guys get rid of it? Any suggestions? Hue saturation, so that would be one way to actually go after this guy. Anybody else? Say what? Split frequency, no. It's possible, it's possible. It seems like that would be really involved and long. So any other suggestions? Curves. So I'm going to show you 2 methods to do this. I don't know that we'll get through both before we take a break, because we're going to take a break in 15 minutes, but we'll get through one of them at least. So I'm going to start with doing this by the numbers. And so how many people in here struggle with matching colors? And you want something to be in one image to be exactly the same color. Throw a curve on it, throw a hue saturation, you just start fucking with the sliders and you hope for the best. It's kind of a Hail Mary, right? That is no way to do it. It takes way too damn long. It's way too much guesswork. It's just not the way to actually do it. So I'm going to show you the more precise way of doing it, and that's where we're going to start with on this one. It's the more complicated of ones of doing this, but again, so I'm going to show you 2 different ways of doing this. In your future work, when you're going to do this, it's really, you're going to have both of these weapons in your arsenal, and it's just a question of which one you think is going to function better for you, which one does work better for you. If you don't know, you could try them both. So this is how it goes. So if we zoom in and take a look at this, so I'm going to zoom into what I consider to be the problem area. I'm just going to pick her right side over here, because what I'm looking for is the worst of the sunburn. So the truth of it is, if you look at the very top of her chest up in here, if I get the top up here fixed, I'm still going to have a problem down here, because the problem down here on the lower part is worse. There's more sunburn here. However, if I take the sunburn down here, if I can get something that'll fix this, I just need to use a weaker version of that to fix the part up at the top. Does that sort of make sense? So when you do this work, you always want to find the area that is the most problematic, the one that needs the most fixing. So that's what I'm going to do. But if you look at this image, you'll also notice that there's a problem with this. And the problem with this is that her skin texture is actually very, you can see areas in this really heavy sunburn area. There's still white areas in here that don't have any sunburn really in them at all. But then there's areas that do have really bad red sunburn happening that's happening in all of those. So, and this holds true. So anyway, I'm scared about dropping a color picker point down on this, because if I hit the white part, I'm getting a false reading. If I hit the red part, so I need to be assured that I'm going to hit the red part. This also goes true, I think we had this conversation before. Anybody in here who is scanning magazine work, anything that's got a halftone dot, you run into that very same problem. You have to be very careful about sampling those halftone dots, because those are discrete dots of cyan, magenta, and yellow. And you can hit a perfectly yellow dot when you think you're trying to hit something that looks like a blue hat, right? So the solution to this is to make a copy of this layer. So simply grab this layer down here, drag it down to make a copy of it, and then blur this layer. So up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur. I'm going to see what a 3 looks like on this guy. It's more than enough. I'm going to actually go back to a 2. Nope, I'm going to go back to a 3. because all I'm trying to do is simply blur this area so I've got a good spot and color to pick on. So I'm going to leave it at a 3 and go ahead and say okay to that. Then I am going to go to my color sampler tool to get readouts on this stuff. So I've got the color sampler tool right here, and I'm going to look, what I'm looking for is the reddest of the red, and so I'm going to click right there. That seems to be one of them. There's a number of them that are around here. You want to avoid these lighter reds up in here. You certainly want to avoid this stuff that's up in here. So I'm now going to back off. So now the solution to this, or the solution that I'm going to propose to you guys, is to get rid of the red. If I can actually make this red up here the same color as the unburned skin, won't I have removed the sunburn? I will. So when we're looking for, so I've got my bad sample, the part that needs to be corrected. Now, some people would come out here onto her arm out here, and they would pick a color sampler point out here. I discourage that because this is two completely different parts of this girl's body. This part, for the most part of her life, other than the day she got sunburned on, it's like me. It's like everybody sitting in this room. It's largely covered, where your arms are largely uncovered a lot of the time. So it's two different things. Whereas, so I would not sample a point out here because she could have a farmer tan. She could, who knows what's going on out here. But I do know that the area that's right underneath down in here, if I can make it again, this color up here, the same as this color down here, then I probably have a good chance of fixing this. So I'm going to set my second color sampler point down here. So again, using the color sampler tool, I'm going to drop another point right down here. So these are my two values right here. The problem area is the number 1, and I'm going to suggest to you right now, try to keep this in mind. Try to keep it's the order. Pick your problem first, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. It's possible to do these in reverse order, but it makes the work that we've got to do after this more complex. So pick the problem area first. So then I'm going to add a curve to this guy. So I'm going to come down and add an adjustment layer, and I'm going to select curves. And you'll see when you select curves that your readouts that are over here change. And you get two numbers now. So I'm getting on my point number 1, and yours should be close. They're not going to be exactly the same, but they should be relatively close. I've got a 242 with a forward slash and a 242, and a 173 forward slash 173, and a 168 forward slash 168. These are simply indicating before and after numbers for the curve. Now, they're the identical numbers right now. They're the same numbers right now because I haven't done anything with the curve. So, but this is what it's showing. So the points that are on, the readouts that are on the left-hand side are the befores, and on the right-hand side are the afters. Does that make sense, everyone? Everybody good on this? Because if you don't get this part, this is not going to work for you. We good on this? So here's the trick. What I'm trying to do is make these after points on my problem area equal to the before points on my good area. Does that make sense? So what I need to do is I need this after right here, this 242, I need it to be 240. I should be doing this for the video. I need this 242 right here to be 240. I need this 173 to be 206, and I need this 168 to be 191. Does that make sense what the goal is? So this is why you set the problem and the problem first and the fix second, is because it puts these numbers next to one another. If we'd reverse the order, it would actually be the inside numbers here matching the outside numbers there. It's just, it's just more confusing. So does that make sense what the goal is? Okay, so then let's do it. It's relatively straightforward. Click on the drop-down menu for your curve and grab the red channel. That's where we're going to start. Click on the color picker, the targeting adjustment tool. It's that little hand that's got the double-headed arrow, and come straight over to the area that is your problem area right here. And then we are going to watch this menu, and I'm simply going to click and drag up or down to change this value. And again, what I'm shooting for here is I want this 242 right here to be 240. So I'm going to click right here on that point and drag down slightly, and now I've got this 240 right here on my number 1 point equals the 240 on my other point right here. They are now the same. Did that work for everyone? Go to your green channel, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Green channel using the targeting adjustment. I need this 173 to actually read 206. So I'm going to click down here at the bottom and drag up till I hit 206. So now my after number of this number 1 is equal to the before number here. So this is doing exactly what I wanted to do. And then finally I need to go to the blue channel. And in the blue channel I need this 168 here to be 191. So again, using the targeting adjustment tool, simply click on that point and drag up. So now I've got exactly what I was hoping to have. My again, on my my number 1 point, the problem area right here, the after numbers, what this curve is making this color in here be is 240 is equal to the 240, 206 is equal to the 206, and 191 is equal to the 191. Did that work for everyone?
My hand's like not popping up. When I click the little, that thing.
When you click the targeting adjustment tool, when you come over, it should be should look like an eyedropper.
Yeah, but then when I click on it, it doesn't.
Point.
Or now it is. Is this like what we did with that scan I had? Like where?
So you're up
Am I
here,
just
click on,
clicking
yeah,
this
just
point
click
now?
there,
Oh,
and drag either up or down.
okay.
All right, so you want that, so this is your before point, yeah, it's the number 1. You want that 233 to read 232, so it's a very slight
Right.
change. And then you want that 174, so you can go to your green channel next. If you're within 1 point,
Right,
you're
right,
gonna be all
okay.
right.
Right, okay.
Got
I
it?
get
So go to
yeah.
your green channel, and let's do the same thing.
Yeah,
Again,
it
click
just
on the
at
same
first
spot.
It wasn't coming
Yeah.
up.
Okay, so did this work for everyone? Okay, so this works great, but the problem with this is that it's it's affecting my entire image, and I don't want that to affect my entire image. So with the mask actually highlighted, simply hit Command-I to invert it, and it hides everything we've done. You can get rid of these points now. They've done their work. So again, because I don't like these things, they actually get in my way. So again, I've selected the color picker tool again, and I'm simply going to hit clear all. It just gets rid of the points because stuff like that, it bothers me. It seems to be in the way. So I've got my mask. I've got my curve right here. It's being completely hidden with a black mask. I'm going to throw the blurred version of it away. It's actually done its job as well. And I'm simply going to work on this mask to remove the sunburn. Does that make sense for everyone? So again, at this stage of the game, I'm going to go again to a brush, the B key. I'm going to make it a completely soft brush and normal blending mode, 100% opacity, and I'm going to take my flow way down. Again, the way my flow seems to be working lately, I'm going to come down to around a 3% in this guy because I want to build this in slowly. I'm going to zoom into this just slightly right here, make my brush a little bit smaller, and again, I'm simply going to start scrubbing across this. Make sure that white is your foreground color. And I keep moving pretty fast on this guy. I'm going to come up here to the sunburn that's on the top of her. I'm going to zoom back out just a little bit. I'm going to go after this side over here. I'm going to get rid of the sunburn on the top. And I'm just scrubbing continually back and forth to actually try to bring this part out. Now, at this stage of the game, I'm going to slow down and stop because I think one of the problems that I'm also having here is tonal. It's actually a little bit darker in here. If you want to see what you've actually done, you can do your keys back on and off. And this has actually started to correct the problem for us. It's the beginning stages of it. However, what I'm also running into a problem here is her tan line right here. It's actually making this part really, really obvious to me. So it's conceivable that I also need to lighten this area up a little bit. So let me get just a little bit more of this red out, especially up here in the top. There's a little bit of red on her shoulders that you can actually get out using the same trick. So you can take a little bit of the sunburn out. There's some up on her other shoulder up in there. There's a little bit on that arm down in there. Possibly a little bit more. Oh, look at this. There's sunburn that's right underneath. You can see it through the lace. You actually need to get that part out as well. And it's also on the other side. So that actually gets rid of that part reasonably well here. So this again is a good beginning fix for me right here. It's actually removed some of it. I still think it's a little too dark. If you want to see what it is you've really done, what your mask looks like, hold down the Option key and click on the mask, and it'll show you what you've actually done. And you can see the area that's actually down in here. This is the area right between her boobs that doesn't really have too much sunburn. I've avoided that. The areas down here that are right where the worst of the sunburn is a little bit lighter. I am missing something right in the middle, so the reason I look at these masks is to go in and try to spot this. You can see where the bra strap is right here. That's the area, so I don't need to actually paint into that. You can see sort of what I've done on the arms and a little bit on the shoulders. You can actually pick this up. So the reason I look at these masks is to spot these areas right in here. Now these may be good. These may be, I want to stay this way, but I just want the mask to help give me that information. So, and it is. Hold down the option key and click on the mask and it'll go back to it. I'm going to see if there's anything. There's nothing up here at the top. So this seems maybe a little bit right there. Maybe a little bit right there. So at any rate, I'm feeling relatively good about that. To then actually augment this, I am going to then add another curve to this. So I'm simply going to add a blank curve to this. Now adding this blank curve right here, we can use blending. Typically, I would go into this guy right here and I would actually use tonal retouching to lighten this up. But that's going to take time to do this. So I'm going to see if we can actually do a faster trick to actually do this. I'm going to use blending modes to do this. So I've simply added a blank layer. If you do a drop-down menu for the layer itself right here and you change it from normal down to multiply, you see it makes your image darker. So this would be a quick cheat to actually do a burning on this to make things darker. If you continue down in your blending modes, the opposite of multiply is screen. This makes your image lighter, and it's considerably lighter. I mean, this is how I would actually light this girl if I had to, because then this becomes art. No. So does that make sense what I'm doing here? It's just a quick cheat on this guy. I'm now going to do the very same trick I did using the removal for the red sunburn. I'm going to invert this mask, Command I. I've got my brushes set up exactly the same way I want it to be. I need to slowly bring in the lightening part of the top edge of her boobs right here. So simply going to come in again and start to work on this area, on this layer mask, using an incredibly low flow and a brush to actually bring this part back. And do a quick snapshot of that. And scroll up to the top. And this is my before and my after. Before and after. And there's no question about it. There's simply no question about it. It's just, the numbers tell you what it should be. You're not struggling with, oh God, that it looks like a little too green now, or that doesn't have the right, whatever. They simply don't lie, and it's just it's direct, you're there, you're done, and you're moving on. We did that in 10 minutes. Are there questions? Okay, it is, let's call you guys back a quarter till, that'd be great. Check.
If you have the time, would you continue working to like